The rivet pocket flares that we have here for the 2019 and newer Silverado is going to be a unique option that combines the aggressive look and coverage of most of your aftermarket flares, but one that will be slightly lower profile in regards to height and size. Now, these made in the USA flares include a set of 4 along with the hardware and rivets for right around that $500 price point. Now, the installation will not involve any drilling whatsoever, but since there is a fair amount of work here involved, the site is going to call this a strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, along with, I would say, at least an hour of your time, maybe a little bit more, but if you hang with me for a bit, we'll walk you through that job later in the video. So flares are one of those love it or hate it truck modifications, but they do actually serve a purpose outside of just general appearance. They're going to provide some additional coverage to help cover up some tire poke caused by a wider wheel or possibly a lower offset or both. Listen, I love a little bit of poke with my trucks. I'm not gonna lie, I think it looks awesome, but the reality is some laws mandate that those tires are covered at all times, and well, if they're not, you could either fail inspection, get a warning, or a ticket from your local authorities, and none of that stuff is very fun. Now, on top of that, an uncovered tire on a wider, lower offset wheel is gonna result in a very dirty and scratched up truck, especially if you do a lot of off-roading. The reason being, that uncovered tire is gonna fling mud, dirt, water, snow, rocks, whatever, down the side of your truck, and again, can lead to scratches pretty easily. Some of you guys might be saying, hey man, it's a truck, I really don't care, but the reality is not everybody wants to scratch up their brand new shiny Silverado or wash it every day. And with that said, the flares that we have here today will help keep your truck a bit cleaner thanks to the additional coverage. In fact, you're looking at just about 1.5 to 2 inches of additional coverage off those fenders for both the front and rear wheels, which again will help keep your truck cleaner. Now, it's also going to make for a much more aggressive look, and I think functionality aside, a lot of people just dig the look of flares due to the appearance they contribute. Now, materials are going to feature a UV resistant ABS plastic, which is gonna help keep that black looking good for years to come and should help prevent any fading from the sun. But going back to the appearance, I do wanna talk about these particular flares. I do think they're a little bit unique in the fact that they're going to offer that horizontal coverage off the fender, but the vertical coverage or sheer size of the flare themselves gonna be a little bit more low profile compared to some of your other options that you're gonna find here on the site, which I actually think fit the lines of the 19 and newer Silverado a little bit better. But rounding out the appearance, you're gonna notice that these particular flares do feature the included rivets or hardware, which some people might like, others maybe not so much. Listen, if you're not the biggest fan of the included rivets or fake hardware going around the sides of these guys, you can always check out a smooth flare option from a company like Speedform that we have here on the site instead. But what do you say we switch gears and get into that installation as promised earlier? And again, no drilling, nothing crazy with these guys, but installing all of those individual rivets around each flare will take some time. So we're gonna call it a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. And I would say at least an hour. Again, installing that hardware might drag this one out a little bit longer, but regardless, check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown right now.
The tools used for this install are a ratchet, T40 Torx bit socket, T15 Torx bit socket, 10mm socket, 10mm wrench, a knife or scissors, a microfiber cloth, and some detail spray. So before we start the actual installation part of these fender flares, there's a little bit of assembly that needs to be done on the table. The bolts that go along the edges of the fender flares need to be installed, as well as the weather stripping that protects the body against the fender flares itself. So I'm going to use my T40 Torx bit and a 10mm wrench, and I'll install the 11 nuts and bolts that go along the edges of the flares. So the next thing we need to do is measure out and install the weather stripping onto the back of our flares. This is going to protect the paint on the body of the truck from the edge of the fender flare where they meet together. Once I have my length determined, I can make a cut with my razor knife. The next thing you're going to want to do before you install the weather stripping on is use the provided alcohol wipes and wipe down the edges where the 3M backing for the weather strip is going to stick to the edge of the flare. So I'm going to start by just peeling the corner of my 3M. I'm not going to peel the whole thing until I have everything placed the way I want it. So once the weather stripping is installed all along the edge of the flare, you can see I have my little bit of 3M backing here peeled back, and now I'll just maintain the pressure on the seal and I can pull off the backing, just making sure my weather strip stays in place on the flare. Now just apply some light pressure, just so you make sure you have good adhesion for the weather strip. Once you've completed this, you can repeat the process on the other 3 flares. If your truck is equipped with the factory mud guards, these are going to have to come off in order to install our new flare. It's a T15 Torx bit screw for here, and there's also a 10mm bolt here on the bottom. Ours is missing, but you'll need a 10mm socket to remove it. Now's a really good time to make sure that the body is nice and clean underneath where the flares are going to mount to the vehicle. So I'm just going to take a microfiber with some detail spray and clean everything off. The kit provides you with these small abrasive resistant pads that are supposed to be placed in the slot locations for the fender flare. That's going to be right here in front of this bolt flange, and again back here in front of this bolt flange. So I've peeled that off, and now I can stick this on right here. And I can repeat that on the other one. So now I can install the supplied clips onto the abrasive resistant pads that we just installed. And we want to make sure that they lock into the hook of the fender very nicely. And the last one's going to get installed right here on the inside of the fender. And now we can install our fender flare. Once the rest of the fender flare is clipped into place, we can reinstall our factory T15 Torx screws that we removed earlier. In order to get these fender flares installed on the rear, there are 2 screws I need to remove here in the back wheel arch, and there's also one in the front that I need to remove from the top of the mud guard. I'm going to use my T15 Torx bit and pull those out. Make sure to retain your hardware for reinstallation. We only need to remove this top screw here on this mud guard. We do not need to remove the mud guard completely like we did in the front. Now's going to be a good time to make sure the surface of the vehicle is clean before you install your fender flares, so I'm just going to take a microfiber cloth and some detail spray and wipe everything down. Now I can sit my flare in place, and I'm going to use the 3 bolts that I removed to hold it securely until I can get the clips installed all around the wheel arch. And I can reinstall these 2 screws in the back here, and then I can install my clips that are provided with the kit. Now I can install the clips that are provided with the kit. There's a small barb on the inside of that that's going to line up with the slot, so I'll just push this up tight against the body, and then I can install my clip. Now I can repeat that for the other 2. Once you've completed your installation on one side of the truck, you can repeat the same exact process on the other. That's going to wrap up this review and install of the Rough Country Pocket Fender Flares in flat black for your 2019 to 2020 Silverado 1500. Thanks for watching, and for all things Silverado, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.